Today is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023. Today, we are here to listen to a Dhamma talk about the essence of Buddhism, focusing on liberation from the cycle of birth and death. This involves contemplating Dhamma, which is the highest wisdom in Buddhism, specifically contemplating death. This is referred to as dying before dying. Practicing Dhamma in this way, by contemplating death before it happens, allows us to spend less time in practice. This kind of practice can be done at any time and is always beautiful, excellent, and auspicious. Practicing this before we die, especially as we get older, say at the age of 70, 75, or 80, or when we are ill, makes it easier for us to let go of our sense of self. The mind will release its attachments more easily. Ignorance, which has long dominated the minds of living beings, will be easily destroyed. This Dhamma teaching is considered very beautiful and excellent. The concept of dying before dying is about completely extinguishing ignorance and the seeds of future birth. It is a direct path to nirvana, eliminating suffering at its root. If we contemplate this regularly and practice it consistently, it will make it much easier for us to be free from suffering. Our average lifespan is about 80 years, according to the Buddha's standard. On average, we live up to 80 years. Reflecting on our lives, we have survived many close encounters with death. We have almost died countless times. Reaching this age without dying, speaking in a coarse sense, means we are very fortunate. Many people die at birth or even before birth. No one can escape the law of karma. It is a natural law. I would like to start by talking about external karma, the external nature, the law of external karma, which actually originates from within. But I will talk about the external because most of us are still attached to and fascinated by it, not fully understanding it. Whatever karma we create, whether good or bad, we will inevitably receive the results of that karma. It is a natural phenomenon, a law of nature. External karma arises from our actions. Let me speak in a straightforward manner, in a worldly sense, in a way that humans can understand and relate to. Whenever we do something in our lives, it always affects others, other beings, and other minds. Whether we are at home, outside, or interacting with anyone, the path of karma is always present. When we are with our family at home, the moment we open our mouths to speak, karma is already created. Some words we say might even cause someone to lose their life, and we might not even realize it. For example, saying something like, "No matter what you do, you will never succeed," is a careless remark from a person who is ignorant and lacks compassion, someone who is very self-centered. Such words can cause the other person to harbor resentment, suffer severe emotional pain, or even develop illnesses and intense suffering. These words can embed suffering in their minds for countless lifetimes. Just a simple statement like that can create immense karmic consequences. Be very careful, everyone. This is why the Buddha taught us to maintain moral conduct in body and speech. When we preserve our body and speech, it is common for enlightened teachers to help us overcome suffering and achieve enlightenment. However, this often conflicts with karmic creditors, some of whom hold deep grudges because their lives were ruined in past lives when they were humans. They were never apologized to or asked for forgiveness. Instead, they were continually harmed. In this life, they seek revenge. When enlightened beings help these individuals achieve enlightenment and liberation from suffering, these karmic creditors may retaliate against the enlightened beings. However, such vengeful spirits only bring more suffering upon themselves, facing greater misfortune and danger. Some of these spirits are very coarse and do not care about the enlightened beings or the teachings of the Buddha. They think of attacking those who have attained enlightenment, but their actions often backfire, causing them to suffer even more. These spirits are usually those who do not frequent temples or practice Dharma. They are often without religion. Such spirits are called asuras and are quite numerous. They are beings who do not seek the Dharma and upon death become asuras. I would say that 99.999% of them become asuras. They have no Dharma, no refuge, and are highly egotistical, filled with anger and hatred, and hold deep grudges. These spirits are very intense and do not fear the Dharma. When they seek revenge, they do so with great intensity. We have enlightened teachers to help us achieve enlightenment and liberation from suffering. However, karmic creditors do not easily let go. Even after we achieve enlightenment, they remain with us, seeking ways to harm us. Therefore, it is essential for us to seek forgiveness from them and extend merit to them. Asking for forgiveness. The act of bowing and asking for forgiveness for karma is crucial. This type of karma causes us suffering, and we are the ones who choose to create this suffering ourselves. This karma drives us to do everything from birth to death, every single second. It leads us to do everything, let me tell you. This karma, unless someone has the disposition of wisdom and has accumulated wisdom and merit, will have a path to follow the principles of wisdom. Even if they have only 1%, 2%, or 5% wisdom, it is good. It will be the only way that can help us sustain ourselves. We have 95% of karma as ignorance and only 5% as wisdom. Just that little bit can serve as a faint light, guiding us towards liberation, freeing us from this ignorance-driven karma. This karma is a major one, the father and mother of all, which is the ignorant mind. This is very important. It controls the minds of all beings and is a karmic creditor that does not let anyone go. No one can escape from this karma, not even a single person. Only the Buddha could escape it, but even he almost died, let me tell you. The Buddha had to dedicate his body and life, dying before dying, to escape from this karmic creditor. He was the first to escape it by himself. Then he spread his knowledge to teach us all through the practice of contemplating death, before death, which is the highest wisdom and the most beautiful, pure Dharma. This karmic creditor is an internal force that makes us live in various ways. It dictates and drags us to do everything, let me tell you. If we do not have the wisdom of Dharma to guide us, we will be dragged by it very easily. Every moment we think, it gets us immediately. Every moment we flow with the mind's tendencies, we are dragged by it. Escaping from the power of this cycle of ignorance is not easy, let me tell you. Therefore, when anyone tries to help these individuals, most of them will be stubborn, dismissive, or even abusive. As we all know and have witnessed, when we become enlightened in the Dharma, we try to guide our relatives, even our parents, our children, and those we love the most. When we bring the excellent and supreme teachings of the Buddha to them, teaching them to contemplate death before death, which is a beautiful and supreme Dharma, those we love, who have karmic creditors in the form of ignorance controlling their hearts, will often respond negatively. They may insult us, criticize us, gossip about us, mock us, test us, be stubborn, argue, and refuse to follow our guidance in countless ways. For those of us who are enlightened in the Dharma, if our minds are not as resolute as the Buddha's, we may become discouraged. We might think, oh, I won't help anyone anymore. I'll just save myself. Telling them doesn't work. They don't listen. It's better not to help them, otherwise they'll criticize us, insult us, stop talking to us, mock us, and cause us harm. It's better not to help. Enough. Everyone for themselves. This is the nature of karmic creditors attacking us, those whose minds are not strong enough, whose determination is not firm enough, will retreat. Many of the Buddha's disciples will retreat thinking, I'll just save myself and not help anyone else. Let them go to hell if they must. I'll stop teaching others and just save myself, entering nirvana alone without helping anyone. This is the nature of the Buddha's disciples, who are not strong enough. The brightness of the mind of those who have attained enlightenment is immense in the spiritual world. The Buddha and all the arahants rejoice and commend them. However, some of us, upon attaining enlightenment, fail to see its value and consider it trivial. This is what it means to not appreciate the value of the Dharma. Now, the method of seeking forgiveness for karma, I've already talked about seeking forgiveness for external, coarse karma, right? Let's talk about seeking forgiveness for ignorance, avidya. This is the major karma, the real karma. It resides within our minds, deeply embedded. It's not the external karma that involves actions towards others, which then causes them to retaliate against us. That is external karma. Most of us are overly concerned with such coarse karma. I've already taught the method of seeking forgiveness for that type of karma. Now, this karma is the karma of ignorance. Let's seek forgiveness for this karma. Seeking forgiveness for this karma of ignorance must come from the heart, otherwise it won't let go. The karmic creditors of ignorance are not easily appeased. You must speak and declare from a courageous heart. You must die before dying. Only then will they accept and release you. To seek forgiveness from these karmic creditors of ignorance, first you must chant Namo 3 times, invoking the Buddha as the presiding witness. Without the Buddha's presence, our strength is insufficient. Have the Buddha as the presiding witness. From this moment onwards, I will strive to be mindful and aware, to listen to the Dharma, and to not seek rebirth. This life will be the last. I will die before dying. May the Buddha be my witness. May my accumulated merit benefit the spirits of all beings in the 3 realms, allowing them to hear the Dharma and ascend to the heavenly realms to listen to the teachings in the enlightened assembly. When you understand karma, you should also understand the cause of karma in order to be free from it. This involves the practice known as dying before dying. The Buddha taught us the Dharma from the beginning of his enlightenment until his parinirvana, spending 45 years tirelessly guiding beings every day and every moment. He dedicated himself to helping all beings who had a connection with him, performing his duties beautifully throughout. He taught us to contemplate the Dharma and practice dying before dying. This means to die from the sense of self before the physical body dies. Die truly before the body dies in a conventional sense. Conventional death is called false death. Die truly first, which means dying and not being reborn. True death is dying and not being reborn. Die before the false death, which is when the body stops breathing. That is called false death. True death is when the mind no longer has a sense of self. This mind no longer has a self within it, leaving only pure nature without a self. This is what is meant by dying before dying. Practicing this kind of Dharma requires determination, as mentioned earlier, and regularly listening to teachings about the mind. Be mindful and understand the mind, seeing that this mind is not our mind and that there is no self within it. It is very simple and easy. Practicing this Dharma leads directly to the essence of the Buddha's teachings, the essence of Dharma practice, and directly to nirvana. It is a beautiful and easy practice of dying before dying. It doesn't cost any money and doesn't require traveling anywhere. We can attain enlightenment easily. Many people, including children, women, men, the elderly and the disabled, have attained enlightenment. Many monks and lay people have also attained enlightenment. In this era, there are indeed many who have achieved this. Is it the last time? Speaking and teaching others to come and listen to the Dharma, to inform them about the Dharma, there are countless techniques and methods. Let us do this as our final act before we leave this world. Whether it is much or little, let us do it. Let us bring them in. At the very least, they will hear some Dharma, and if they attain Sotapanna, that would be great. Let them grasp the fundamentals before they die. If they get the core principles, that is still good. Even if they just hear the sound of the Dharma, which is about wisdom and awakening to the mind, contemplating the Dharma, and dying before dying for the last time, it is all beautiful and auspicious for them. It is for all beings, our fellow beings who are born, age, suffer, and die. If we don't do it, who will? Should we leave it all to the Buddha alone? We must help each other. Whether we help a lot or a little, we must consider it. It is a beautiful thing to do as our final act. As for the teacher, I am already doing it, don't worry. I will fulfill my duty to provide knowledge and wisdom to help us escape suffering, to help us escape the cycle of birth and death for the last time. I will do it as grandly and beautifully as possible, for the sake of our fellow beings, so that as many as possible can be liberated. Creating various methods to lead us to liberation, laying the groundwork for the future, so that future generations will continue this duty after us. This is what I will do, to create the conditions for as many beings as possible to escape the cycle of birth and death. It must be in the millions, I tell you. Many millions, which is very auspicious. Practicing the Dharma of dying before dying, contemplating the Dharma of dying before dying, means seeing that there is nothing that is us or ours. Seeing nature directly, without detours, seeing it directly. The mind uses mental fabrications to create mental states and forms, imagining that its own form is very bright, which is referred to as being like Devas, Indra, or Brahma. This brightness is like that of Brahma, very radiant with a beautiful form, or even without form but still very radiant. Then it becomes attached to its own brightness, attached to its own happiness, attached to its own form, and remains stuck there. It uses mental fabrications to tell itself, look, I am bright, now I am very bright, now my mind is very bright. It uses mental fabrications to tell itself that it is bright, even though the brightness itself does not say it is bright. For example, when we look at a light bulb, what we know now does not say it is dark or bright. When we look outside the house in an open space, looking up at the sky, it is dark. When we look, we see only darkness. That is not called dark. When we look at the light bulb here, it is not called bright. It is just as it is. It knows like this. The nature of the mind is empty. Every time it encounters something, it performs the function of knowing. It knows everything, but it does not say what it knows. It knows without speaking. It is like a certain state, just a state of knowing. Our minds are naturally empty, performing the function of knowing everything, but it does not say what it knows. Now it is the mental fabrications that assign values, saying, this is called bright, that is called dark. Similarly, the minds of all celestial beings, whether they are Devas, Indra, Brahma, or even beings in lower realms, whether positive or negative, higher or lower, good or bad, it is all the mental fabrications of the mind. The mind fabricates values without using language. But we humans in the world use conventional language, like Thai, to describe these fabrications. People constantly seek external attachments, and this causes suffering. Just like us, we strive for happiness through our senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. Celestial beings, Devas, do the same, striving for the brightness of the mind. They want to be like others, to be admired. When their light starts to diminish, they become anxious and seek more light, doing everything possible to increase it, which is referred to as seeking merit. They chant, rejoice in others' merit, and help those with great merit to increase their own happiness and light. Some spirits even possess people or appear in dreams, asking them to perform rituals, make merit, or worship them to increase their light. These spirits are often deluded, and we, as ordinary people who have not studied the Dharma, are easily misled by such things. We enjoy stories of supernatural powers and worship these spirits, offering them merit. These spirits are often low-level beings with defilements, desires, and greed. They can both help and harm humans. If we do not follow their wishes, they may cause trouble, becoming our karmic creditors. This cycle of karma continues endlessly. Those who do not understand this are easily misled. We must understand that the mind is naturally empty, but it is covered by ignorance, like a bubble surrounding the heart. In truth, it is emptiness. Those people are us every day. Do we know? Every day we encounter the Buddha all the time, every second. We also encounter the Arahants and the disciples all the time, but we don't pay attention. It's just like in the old days. The teacher doesn't want to use the words extremely ignorant or extremely slow. To put it bluntly, we've gone to hell countless millions of times. It's just like in the old days, no matter which era. We encounter the Buddha, the Dharma, and the path to die before dying, the path to enter nirvana and not be reborn. Dying before dying is something very excellent. It is the direct escape from suffering. Dying before dying means being free from the self, seeing that nothing is ours or belongs to us. This is dying before dying, which is something very excellent. When there is no self, imagine how comfortable it is. There is no need to suffer with anything because there is no self, no one, no issues. Nothing happens in the world. Everything is empty. There is nothing to do because there is nothing that is ours. Nothing truly exists, not even the speaker or the listener. There is only something that is natural, existing as it is. It is nirvana, all the time. This is dying before dying. We all have this nature, but we just need to understand it. It's very pitiful that in the past we might have listened to the history of the Buddha in a beautiful way, but there are aspects we haven't heard. That's exactly how our mind works. It's just very ignorant, so it clings to the idea of a self. But whenever we realize that there is no self, it returns to its original empty nature. There is only action. From now until we die, there are only actions appearing and disappearing. There's nothing to hold on to, nothing to give value to. Practicing the Dharma and dying before dying is simple. We just need to listen to the teachings often. Regarding the mind, we need to understand that it is naturally empty. Every time it encounters something, it functions by knowing. The mind knows, but it doesn't say it knows. It knows all the time. When we look, it knows immediately. When we open or close our eyes, it knows whether it's dark or light. It knows what it's perceiving without saying it knows. That's the mind. When a sound hits, it knows without saying it knows. That's the mind functioning to know sound. It doesn't say it knows, it just knows, and that's it. This is the purity of the mind that will not be reborn. When we smell something, the mind functions by knowing. Let's use an example from our daily lives. We all sweep the floor, mop the floor, and do laundry. It's natural for everyone to do these chores, or some might be wealthy enough to have others do it for them, but naturally we all have to sweep, mop, and do laundry. Nowadays, we use washing machines while we are doing laundry. Practicing the Dharma, like dying before dying, means seeing that all natural phenomena exist as they are. There is no self, no one, and no issues. For example, thoughts and emotions arise naturally. When we listen to the Dharma carefully, we realize that all these are just natural processes without any self or ownership. They are not us or ours. They are just natural processes that we become aware of at that moment, and then they pass away. For instance, when we think about how to deal with someone or feel irritated and plan what to say or how to scold, these are just natural occurrences. While doing laundry, we might feel irritated because of the smell. At that moment, we become aware of it naturally, and then it passes away. This awareness, without further elaboration, is crucial. We need to understand this deeply. We should listen to teachings and understand how to be aware without thinking further. The mind is naturally empty. When it encounters something, it knows it, and then returns to its empty state if we do not continue to think about it. This is the practice of knowing without elaboration. The mind returns to its original emptiness, with no issues, no self, and no one. It's like there is no one in the world, no smells, no laundry, no smoking, no one smoking in the house or car. There are no such issues. It's just emptiness, like space, with no self or anyone. There are only people who are drunk or crazy who don't understand this yet. Do you get it? Awareness is always present. You don't need to create it. It knows everything already. For example, when you smell something, you immediately know it. You might think, oh, it smells like cigarettes, my partner is smoking in the car. While you're complaining, you already know it. You can even visualize your partner smoking in the car. This is pure natural awareness, and every time we try to do something, it is the birth of the mind. Every time we try to do something for a purpose, it is the immediate birth of the mind. Practicing to avoid this birth is very simple because nature functions perfectly and purely. It arises and ceases, letting go all the time. It appears and then lets go. It arises and ceases continuously, and all phenomena are very pure. It is like dying before dying every second. But when we make a mistake, ignorance arises and elaborates further. This is why we are taught to practice all the time, thinking we are the ones practicing, trying to do something for a purpose, which leads to the birth of the mind and suffering. However, when we do nothing, which is called jogging, it will naturally know all the time without us doing anything. It will see everything from waking to sleeping, every moment, every breath. The mind elaborates every second without us doing anything. It will see naturally and simply by itself, and it will know and then cease. When washing clothes, emotions arise. If we become aware of this, we realize that these emotions are just doing their job. As soon as we recognize that there is an emotion, it ends right there. The mind already knows. For example, when we smell something, the mind immediately thinks and complains. Once the complaining starts, emotions arise. All of this is already known by the mind. There is no need to try to understand or extinguish it because everything that arises will eventually cease. Everything appears and then disappears continuously. They never persist forever. Everything arises to cease, to die, as the Buddha taught. Impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. All phenomena have their nature, which is impermanent and not self. They have no owner and there is no self in this process. Let thoughts and emotions do their job. The key is to recognize them and not think further. Just knowing is enough, and then let it go. Nature will think on its own. Our only duty is to be aware. When mental formations arise, just be aware and remain empty. When emotions arise, just be aware and remain empty. When sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches arise, just be aware and remain empty. This is the simplest form of practice, the practice of dying before dying. It means dying from the sense of self. There is no self, only phenomena. Just recognize these phenomena and let them go. This is a position that can help us understand the attainment of enlightenment, reaching the fourth stage of arahantship. However, everything mentioned here is just conventional language. It doesn't have a real self. It's just spoken in a way that makes sense to us so that we can understand. To understand that practicing mindfulness and dying before dying is something simple like this. The teacher will continue to explain to us that after practicing mindfulness, if anyone understands this point, it ends easily right here. Now let's continue. While we are traveling together, sitting in a car, at that moment there is a father driving, a mother sitting on the left, children sitting in the back, and grandparents sitting in the back as well. We are all sitting together. We might be the driver, the father driving, or we might be the wife sitting next to him. At that moment, while driving, the children in the back are playing, teasing each other, and sometimes crying. The sounds that come in are already processed by the mind. Do we understand? Can we feel that the mind has already processed it naturally? When the children tease each other or fight, at that moment, we are sitting in the front, and our mind naturally thinks, "Oh, the kids are always noisy. This one is always crying. Whenever they play, they fight." This is the natural thinking process. The sound that comes in is immediately processed by the mind. This is how the mind naturally works, thinking, "Oh, our kids are really stubborn, always crying. When will they stop teasing each other?" This is natural thinking. Now, when this natural thinking arises, at that moment we are also looking ahead while thinking naturally. How long does it take for this to happen? Until there is an understanding that, oh, this is what non-arising is. This is what an empty mind is. This is what just knowing, just seeing, just hearing is. Hey, there really is no story at all. Is this what is called dying before dying? When this understanding arises and is accepted, this is the fruition of arahantship. The mind reaches this state. The mind has wisdom. When the mind has wisdom, the mind is empty. The mind being empty doesn't mean it has attained enlightenment. The mind was already empty before it arose, but it didn't have wisdom. It had ignorance. It was empty, but it had ignorance. But when we understand this Dharma, the mind is empty as before, but now it has wisdom. This is a mind that is empty and has wisdom protecting it. It's like a glass frame covering the mind, with wisdom covering the mind, preventing ignorance from dragging the mind away anymore. This is the characteristic of the mind of one who practices Dharma and grasps the principle of dying before dying. Ultimately, it dies from being us, dies from fabrication, dies from labeling things as something. Stop thinking and fabricating. Let thoughts and emotions do their job without us having to interfere or try. Remember this word. Don't try to do anything for any reason. If you try, it will immediately go wrong. This is called still having doubts, which is why you try. But I'm telling you this so that you will be free from doubt and won't have to try. Just know at that moment and don't say anything more. Just know and see that there is really no story at all. There's no one sitting in the car, no one driving, no car in front to overtake or not overtake, no story about the kids either. Just know and don't fabricate anything at that moment. Not understanding the Dharma because we still have doubts. We practice Dharma but do not understand it, cannot grasp the principles, and do not know ignorance. We do not realize that all phenomena arise in the present moment. Ignorance arises now, do you see? Do we see that there is always a self trying to know, trying to do something with various stories? These stories do not have a real self. There is nothing that truly has a self. The Buddha said it is an illusion, but we believe there is a car in front of us about to overtake, that there will be an accident, that our children are quarrelling, that we have a husband, a wife, parents. We believe everything truly has a self. To understand this, we must realize that there is no real story. Our original mind is empty and has nothing in it. When it gets caught up in thoughts and fabrications in the present moment, stories arise and seem to have a self. How can we prevent this from happening? By knowing that there is nothing at all. Just know and do not fabricate further. Know and do not think. Do not try. Do not distort. Do not do anything. Let the mind know and see the emptiness that has nothing in it. This is the end. This is dying before dying. This is the practice of Dharma in a clear, straightforward way that helps us escape the cycle of birth and death. Understand this clearly. The mind is naturally empty. It functions to feel and then returns to its original emptiness. When it knows, it returns to its original emptiness without saying it knows. It knows and then returns to its original emptiness. When there is contact, it functions to feel and then returns to its original emptiness. When there is contact, it functions to feel and then returns to its original emptiness. Understand this. It ends simply like this. Most practitioners of Dharma practice but do not let go of the practice. They study and practice Dharma in a way that is still attached to the practice itself. The Buddha taught us to practice in order to transcend the practice, to transcend doing something for something else. This is to die before dying, to end all tasks, meaning there is nothing left to do. But we still want to do something for something, trying to focus, trying to maintain it to be this way or that way. This is the birth of locality, the ignorance of the mind, which remains restless. It still needs to practice, still needs to be tired, still refuses to die before dying. There is still a self doing something for something. This is the futile effort of those who lack wisdom. The teaching of Dharma is to give us wisdom, that's all. Those with wisdom grasp the principle easily, understand just this, and they can shine brightly. The result is liberation from death easily. It is as simple as that. This is the teaching of Dharma, which is wisdom, to give us all wisdom. When our mind has wisdom, ignorance cannot remain. When our mind returns to its natural state of emptiness, without any fabrication, which is called liberation, free from conventions, it is just knowing without speaking, without any further thoughts. This is liberation, free from conventions. It is the mind that knows its own nature, knowing what is called purity, what is called emptiness. This is what is called merely knowing, merely fabricating. This is what is called attaining Dharma, free from the cycle of birth and death. This is what is called dying before dying. There is no self, no one, nothing at all, just emptiness. Speaking is empty, hearing is empty, tasting and touching are empty. All stories appear to be known and then they are empty. Nothing is gained, nothing is there. We've reached the end of today's talk. Thank you all for listening. May you all be happy, peaceful, and free from suffering, and may you all open the eye of Dhamma, attain the vision of truth, and achieve enlightenment. If you enjoyed this clip, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for notifications so you don't miss new content in the future. Thank you.